People always ask me, they'll say, well, why'd you change the name? I said, well, it saves micro and amplitons to save internet speed. Still asking that.
That's a great question. We get the name all the time, and no, we are not a Vegas-based organization.
It has some proprietary software that can help map the entire land area that we're looking at to basically look and see where the issues may be quicker, faster, and safer.
This is the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect podcast with your host, Ryan Ray.
Welcome to another edition of the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ray, as always. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you or someone from your company would like to be on the show, the best way to do that is to reach out to me via LinkedIn. Link to my profile in the show notes below. This is the show that you get to connect with folks from upstream, midstream, downstream, all over the industry, and today is going to be no exception. But first, let's thank our sponsor, who is R2 Global. If you're in the industry looking for engineering, surveying, right-of-way services, GIS, or consulting, be sure to check out R2 Global. You can do that by going to GOR2.com. That's GOR, the number 2.com. And today we have on a gentleman, some of the guests I know, some of the guests I don't know, but this gentleman I've known for a couple of years now. It feels like kind of talking offline there. You threw out a date. It's like, wow, it's been that long. So Greg Williams, who is the founder of Lynx. If you're not familiar with Lynx, it is the largest oil and gas social media app. It's kind of like a different. We have the Oil and Gas Connectors Contractors podcast here. Greg, you kind of have the app version of that with Lynx.
Hey Ryan, first off, thanks for the invite for the show. Lynx is a bit different. It's some people have compared it to kind of like the LinkedIn for the oil and gas community, but yeah, we're up to 2,070 members and somewhat today, version 3.1. We left had our last update on the 22nd. So we normally try to push an update out every 1 to 2 months. I think the last time we chatted, I was about 4,500 hours of development in. I'm starting to lose track of development hours here, but
right.
It's been fantastic. Just the action to watch this application and the community organically grow throughout the last year and a half has been an amazing experience. What you learn between what people's expectations are and what you're able to develop under a budget is really, really exceptional. So it's one of those things that a lot of people don't get to experience at this level, and I'm just I'm extremely proud of how much we've accomplished so far.
You talk about that expectation versus reality. We were talking offline about you listened to episode 1 of the podcast with Will Merritt, who works for me, and I always give him a hard time because if you watch like Star Wars, they go up to the big table and they press a button and the Death Star comes up out of it and it's floating around, it's holographic, and everybody can touch it and you can do all that stuff. And I always tell him, I want that. That's what I want. I want to walk into our office and have one of those things. And he always he's like, yeah, okay, not today. So, but you're right. There is that mentality of people saying, hey, we want this. You're like, yeah, I know, I want that too, but it's just not practical sometimes.
You're right. The model of when you start building something in your mind and the way it turns out, it depends on the amount of experience of the people that's working with you. The product, the end result product sometimes is not the way you envisioned it. That is definitely for sure. And Lynx is by far not an exception to that, because there was things that we originally envisioned for the application that has been pushed aside. So what I mean is sometimes you have to throw away good ideas, based on community feedback. And not that they're bad ideas, but they don't fit the community. So you either shelf that idea, for a later version of the application, or, you just completely clean out the closet and start over. And there's been a lot of moments where we've had to, sweep up the floor and start over. But the base part of the application is still very much community driven, and I hope we stay that way.
Well, and I like the way you're phrasing it. You're saying community, and I would just say market driven, which in this case is the same thing. And no matter where you're at in business, the market ultimately dictates whether or not your service or product is something that the market wants. And so you guys kind of have a unique way of measuring whether the market is wanting, what you're offering, because once they download the app, they can play with the app, they can, interact with it, do all this stuff, they can give you feedback. Whereas in maybe more traditional service or products, you kind of have to, get the meeting and then maybe get to do a demo or get to a small project to demo yourself. With you guys, I'm not saying it's easier, but it's probably a little bit different than what you're used to, is saying, well, if you can get someone to download at least, you can kind of get it in their hands and then get that feedback.
The one of the hardest things, Ryan, is to stay fluid and dynamic with everything that's changing in social media. We're not different than your Facebooks and your LinkedIn's as far as the way we work with the public. So we're active on all of the other social media channels, and we actively bring feedback in from all of those different channels. Whether it's on our any of our articles or any of our media or any of our community members on Lynx, that we also share common networks on other platforms as well. So a lot of times, our organic connections that we create and build on other platforms follow us over to Lynx. So that happens in a lot of the social media world, where you have someone that you connect with on LinkedIn, and then you go to Instagram, and all of a sudden they end up connecting with you there. So we're actually the same way, and we bring in feedback from all the other platforms. We have open groups created on each one of the different networks that allow people to make comments about the Lynx application on any of the networks. So it's not closed in, per se, just to Lynx. We take open feedback from all of the other platforms as well.
Okay, and I'm a Lynx user myself. I have the app, have had it for quite some time. Tell me though, because I know the people I interact with are on there, or international folks, and there's some folks in Texas. So where I'm at, who is kind of the audience that you've, without obviously giving away all of your demographic information, but generally, who do you find that's been using the app and has maybe been the most active, engaging audience on the app?
I'm actually glad you're asking that, because we just went through a large kind of analysis phase over 2018 and kind of our results from 2018. So we will make this report public on the website here in the next probably 2 weeks or so, when we get finished adding all the details. We're kind of changing up the website to where we're going to make it a bit more friendly to some of the other members that are international. But the kind of the looks like a bit of the, so at the time for 2018, for the full year, we had a little over 1,600 members. Our top 10 active positions on the application are instructors, field specialists, business development, CEOs, HSE specialists, analysts, first engineers offshore, company presidents, drillers, and operations managers. And that ranges from, so the kind of the top 5 countries in there are the U.S., India, the UK, Western Africa, and Canada. So those, that's our largest demographics, as well as, we have people registered on the application in, I think, some 97 countries now.
Wow. I'm sure you guys have faced this, and so right now, in the U.S. at least, there's a big debate over, social media and its role and privacy and data security, and they're selling the data, this, that, and the other. How do you guys go about that? Because as a new social media company, I'm sure those are things where you're saying, we kind of have to figure, Twitter and Facebook were built on, if we're being quite honest here, and anyone who kind of followed them knew this, they were built on this model of selling other people's data, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, because it kind of helps me figure out which products I like because they have a good idea. But I understand some people's reservations about that, so I'm sympathetic to that argument as well. But for you guys, how do you go about saying, okay, hey, this is what we're going to do with your information. This is how we're going to protect it. We want you guys to come on here, and also with censoring. How do you guys handle issues like that as well?
Okay, so when we started the application, it was pre the General Data Protection Regulation from the EU, right? So we there was a few things that we added in from the very beginning, like some of the some of the one-to-one functionality with with blocking, and then obviously reporting abuse and things like that. That was available from the beginning, but when the release of the GDPR came out, it made things a bit more formal. So we had to kind of had to kind of rewrite a few of the bit of the coding. So what we have now is we have an open dashboard where you can go in and write about what your problem may be or what the abuse may be with certain members on the platform, or you can block content. All of our privacy policies are listed on our website under the actual privacy policy link. But the main thing is that we don't house our own servers. Everything is housed with Amazon. So the data security that Amazon uses, as well as any payment or customer information or like this, none of that resides with us. Everything resides with Amazon and with Stripe. So we follow their lead for privacy as far as data breach and things like that. But for the actual internals of the application and the retention of the data, it's only used for one-to-one connections and connecting you or communicating with you about the actual application. So there's none of that data is being given to anyone else outside of the application or the administrators of the application.
And one thing I've seen on the app is that people will report spammers and things like that. And if you can build a community, obviously a platform like Twitter, who has I heard him say the other day that only 25% of their users are in the United States, which was a crazy statistic, but just such many international users to have. But when you get to that kind of scale, you can't really have a community anymore. It's more of just a like going to a mall. But you guys kind of have a community where you could kind of police it on some level.
No, that's absolutely correct. But the thing that Riglynx is really good about right now, which we will be changing in the future, obviously, as the platform grows, but most of these people that are on the application they do know a large percentage of the people that's there, so they bring additional connections with them. So I would say the founding 50 of the application, or the first 50 members of the application, I believe yourself as well as Kristen with Old Country Media, you guys were in there first. So your connections globally with people around the world helps monitor for things that are being abused also. So there's an underlying thing with Riglynx that the oil and gas has always been built on for 120 years, is that we still actively work together as a team to accomplish problems and fix things. So the community here is much different than your LinkedIn communities, your Twitter, your Instagram. It's still very much like pulling up a chair at your house and just having dinner with your family. That's exactly what Riglynx is. So the feedback that we get is we treat all of our members like family, and the feedback that we get, we actively pursue changes or requirements or things that we feel that the community needs. So that's the largest thing with Riglynx, as well as being able to contact us directly. I'm not sure how many of you guys have been able to get in touch with Mark Zuckerberg over the last couple of years, but I haven't had any success. So just saying, you can still get in contact with us one-on-one right now.
Well, I was talking to Zuck right before we hopped on here, Greg, but I mean, that's just me, so.
Well, hey, I need some tips. So when you get in real good, let me know.
I will. I'll send them your way. Okay. So real quick, you can download the app on iOS and Android. And I think when that first came out, I think I had it on iOS. Then I had a year with Android, and so I switched it to Android, and now I'm back to Apple again. And, sometimes it sounds kind of like, oh, okay, well, you went back and forth. But sometimes those apps don't really translate from one platform to the other. But I've had it on both platforms. It's gone back and forth seamlessly. So that's been a kudos to you guys. But the other thing I want to talk to you about today, just briefly here, is you put out a book a few years back now. I don't have the date here in front of me, but now it's turned into a documentary, which is on National Geographic. It's on something that in the oil and gas industry everyone knows something about, which is, of course, the Deepwater Horizon. Let's go back to the book. Briefly, why did you write the book? And then kind of how did that lead into this documentary?
I spent the largest part of my career working with Transocean. For anyone that doesn't know me, I started with Transocean in the fall of 1999. Worked one of their older rigs in the Gulf, and then was given the opportunity to transfer to some of the newer rigs that they had. I had the opportunity to go to either the Discoverer Enterprise, which if the world's caught up to speed, that's the first dual activity deepwater drill ship that went on the market at the time that Transocean still has the patent over. And I was offered that, or to go to the Deepwater Horizon. And I was going to be given an extra 7 days off if I allotted to go to the Horizon instead of going to the Enterprise. So I took the additional 14 days off, and ended up going to the Horizon. And I spent another a little over 7 years on the Horizon. So that was all the way up from roustabout all the way up to driller when I left in March of 2008. So the book goes into my relationship with the people on board pre-incident or pre-Macondo. So it's very one-on-one. It goes through my transition from different positions on the vessel, and I speak about some of the equipment in very layman's terms. That way, people can kind of connect with the rig and with the people. So it's got a very human touch to it, and it's not an investigation piece. It's not a exploratory document where it's not a white paper. It doesn't go into any details about the incident. But one of the reasons I wrote it was because throughout all of these entire things that's been published, and there was only a couple of other pieces that were really human based, but I realized that there was a lot of the people that we worked with, that I worked with during those years, that didn't get that was kind of dehumanized during the entire Macondo incident, right? So I wanted to bring the human factor back to the forefront of it, and of course, I'm pro environment. I practice the same things that everybody else practices now. The protection and environment is on the very top of my list, but we have to remember that it's a moral strategy that the oil and gas, the world that we live in right now, and there's nothing more moral than the loss of human life. So when you dehumanize a situation like that and put the environment at the forefront, it really breaks down the human side of it. So I was just bringing that back. So it walks through, all the different positions I was in, and then it goes kind of into depth about the actual relationships I had with 8 of the guys that we lost during the incident.
You are right. The human life aspect also often gets overlooked in tragedies, especially when it pertains to the oil and gas, And so, right now we are recording. This will be released, later than the recording date, obviously, but we're recording it, and there was just a plane crash, which was very tragic in Ethiopia, and I think 130-something people, 40-something people, whatever it is, lost their lives. Yeah, it's very sad, terrible. And quite in a plane crash tragedy, it really shifts from the people died to planes and safety and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that the discussion shouldn't happen, but you do see that sometimes we just kind of skim over the fact that there's families all over the world right now who are suffering, just like there were with Deepwater Horizon. And
there's a powerful photo, Ryan, of the actual president of Ethiopian Airlines standing in the middle of that wreckage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many presidents of many airline companies would be directly, photographed in the middle of that flight wreckage. But for me, that shows, the loyalty that he has to finding out, what happened.
Right.
You don't get that in a lot of places.
Right. No, agreed. But as you mentioned, oftentimes we kind of focus on the ancillary issues, if you will, and the loss of human life, the impact of human life, kind of gets overlooked. And with Deepwater Horizon, certainly after a few weeks, that was definitely the case with potential environmental impact. And I'm like you, I'm not trying to not want to destroy the environment, but it has to have its proper place. One thing I like to say is if you want to protect the environment so much, that's fine. Just go live outside. I live in Texas, man. Go live out here in July and August without air conditioner, and then tell me how friendly the environment it is to you, because the environment's here to kick your butt if you ain't careful.
That's exactly right. And as you brought up earlier, once I put the book out, the book had been out. Goodness, it's been out. I think we released it. It was in September of 2017. So about 6 months after the book was released. And in fact, you're one of the guys that picked up a copy not far behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a group called 1895 Films that contacted me. They're out of I think Casablanca, California, and they were wanting to do a bit of development work, and was wanting access to some of my resources that I used to write the book. A lot of the things that were in the book were just directly from memory. A lot of the stats that we put in there obviously come from the EIA, right? So everyone knows that, but the largest part of the human aspect has to come from memory. So they were wanting access to a lot of that, and so there was a mutual friendship built with 1895 Films, and they kept me on throughout the duration. And it that documentary aired on, I think it was February the 17th on National Geographic at 9 p.m. Central Time. And the documentary, or the short film there, so without the commercials and whatnot, it's like 46 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But initially we started on a different storyline from the very beginning, but as it transitioned along, the available footage, because what 1895 and Mr. Jennings does is they use real life footage. They use real life moments in history, whether it's news personnel or aerial footage. They don't record any new footage other than supplement B-roll pieces or things like that. So everything they use is authentic. So that's all the audio, that's all the video. They used a lot of the courtroom audio that was during the investigation. So it puts Macondo in a completely different perspective whenever you're hearing it from the mouths of the people that were involved in, getting people off the rig, getting people in the lifeboats and in the life rafts, and getting them to shore, and then the things that are happening with the Coast Guard during that time, the things that are happening with salvage and wreckage. There's a lot goes on during that 45 minutes that is truly amazing to watch it play out, right? So it's still very heart-wrenching for me to watch. Every rough footage that I got. So I reviewed probably about 6 rough edits of the final documentary before it went live, but every single one of those had me in tears before they went. So it's something that I don't want to relive, and I hope that no one in this world has to live through any incident like that. But it does show you what these people, these men and these women, sacrifice every day going to work, in our industry. So not only that, the impact on the coastline, and through that'll be felt with the different industries as well, especially with tourism. That'll be felt for years. We understand that. We know there was negative effects on a lot of the industries, but my largest message to anyone that's listening and to anyone that knows anything about the Macondo is please do not dehumanize it, because there's families that are still, missing their loved ones. There's families that are, it's hard to put an incident behind you without a body to have closure with. So, those men were well respected on board the rig. Like I said, 8 of them I was personally connected with. So the documentary was really given back to the people and not so much the Macondo incident as a whole. So.
Okay, and we will link to that in the show notes. You can actually watch it online now, so we have a link to that. It's on National Geographic Deepwater Horizon. So we'll link to that in the show notes so people can check it out. We'll also link to the book. So the documentary is called Deepwater Horizon in their own words is the film, and then the book is Deepwater Horizon in the Moment. And obviously we'll link to rig links for iOS and Android in the show notes as well. Greg, first off, thank you for your time today. You're a very busy man. I appreciate it. Any final things before we get out of here today?
Well, Ryan, I just one real quick thing. I'll be doing a speaking event tonight for anyone that's going to be in the Houston area. I know that this show will be posted later on, post the actual event, but it's going to be on the power of social media, and we will be recording that set. Been invited by the Nomads there, so that's the Oil Delegates Society. So we'll get that up on our website later on for everyone else. But if anyone else is interested in having somebody stop by for one of their events and have a chat about social media, then they can feel free to get in contact with me. I'd be happy to have a chat with them.
Okay. Well, Greg, thank you. You're always gracious with your time, and I do appreciate it. Maybe one day you will supplant Zuckerberg as the big social media guru, and that would be just fantastic on my account. So thank you for your time, and best of luck with Rigger Links and the book and all that you got going on, man.
Ryan, thank you for the invite, as well as good luck with your trip there to Africa. I hope everything works out great for you. And again, thanks for the invite.
Okay. And to the listeners, until next time, keep climbing.